What happened to the angels that sinned? Are they in hell? Let's think about it. Hey, my name's Justin Harrell. I challenge you to challenge yourself to think about less taught biblical topics. If you're following along, enough evidence has been presented to form an opinion about all this strange stuff in Genesis chapter 6. Some of you, though, might still be resistant to the idea of angels and women having children. This is why we're looking at New Testament confirmation. Next time, I'll deal with the major objection concerning Jesus, the angels, and marriage. But first, let's cue that cool intro that I worked really hard on. At the weird happenings in Genesis 6, 1 Enoch, and Jude. Now let's see what Peter has to say about it. 2 Peter 2, verses 4 to 8. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them to destruction, making them an example to those who afterward would live ungodly, and delivered righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked, for that righteous man, dwelling among them, tormented his righteous soul from day to day by seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. Wow, this sounds familiar. Angels sin, get locked away, and it compares them to Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, before we look at the differences between Peter and Jude, let's first examine the similarities. Both compare the angels sinning to Sodom and Gomorrah. I won't spend any more time on that topic since I covered it last time in my video entitled Weirder Things in Jude. Something I want you to notice here is that both Jude and 2 Peter mention the angels sinning before it lists man sinning. See, sin is first found among the divine beings. Satan chooses to deceive Eve, and thereby commits murder of the first human beings. He knew that God said if they sinned, they would die. Angels sin, and a man chooses to go along with it. That makes us complicit in the rebellion. Once man sins, he has a sin nature, a fleshly nature, urging him to do evil. But man also has an enemy, a hidden enemy, one that's deceitful and sneaky. These powers of darkness compel us to do all sorts of evil. Let's look back at 1 Enoch again. If you're just finding this video, go back and find my video titled Weirder Things. This has much more on 1 Enoch, or what we commonly refer to as the Book of Enoch. 1 Enoch 7 verse 1 says, These and all the others with them took for themselves wives from among them such as they chose, and they began to go into them, and to defile themselves through them, and to teach them sorcery and charms, and to reveal to them the cutting of roots and plants. So we see that according to this text, the divine beings were the source of witchcraft and drugs. They taught us these things. Is it any wonder then that the use of drugs leads to spiritual oppression? Dabbling in witchcraft and drugs opens doors to wicked powers. Doors that once open are hard to shut. Now, what is mentioned in Peter that differs from Jude? Jude only talks about what happened to the angels that sinned. Peter adds some details about what happened to the men that sinned. He mentions the flood. In the first rebellion in Eden, the divine realm and the earthly realm were separated. Man was cut off from God. In this second rebellion, the ungodly angels are locked away, and the ungodly humans are destroyed in the flood. I'm going to focus on the angels being locked up. Let's reread 2 Peter 2 verse 4. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. Peter says God did not spare the angels that sinned. They're in chains of darkness reserved for judgment. Again, if you interpret any fallen angel as simply a demon, then according to this passage, they should all be locked up. Then who are all the demons Jesus was casting out? Did they break out of prison? Not likely. We'll come back to this in a later video. Peter's referring to a subset of angels. Again, I'm going to read from the Fire Bible study notes. Now, for verse 4, it has this to say: why some of the evil spirits are confined to chains of gloomy darkness and some are free to work with Satan on earth is not explained in Scripture. Yeah, it is. In Jude and in Genesis. The only thing standing in your way of understanding is how you interpret the phrase, the sons of God. Once you understand that the specific crime was sexual sin with human women, everything begins to make sense. Now, some of you might be screaming at the screen.
The New Testament uses the phrase the sons of God, and it doesn't mean angels.
I know this, and that's why my next video will be dealing with this exact objection. For now, I want to focus on the phrase, cast them down to hell. Modern Western culture has a strange relationship with the word and the concept of hell. Kids might snicker and smirk at its mention, or refer to it as
H-E, double hockey sticks.
Then we use it in all sorts of phrases like,
until hell freezes over, or all hell was let loose, or there will be hell to pay, or like a bat out of hell, or hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
we talk about hell all the time, yet we hardly believe it. And even when we do believe it, we don't have a proper biblical understanding of it. In English translations of the Bible, the word hell is placed in for a variety of Hebrew and Greek words. This obfuscates the details and hides the picture being painted by the author. There is more than one hell, and more than one area defined as hell.
Whoa, wait, what?
Yeah, it's true. In Hebrew, you have the word Sheol, used to talk of the grave, or the abode of the dead, the underworld. In Greek, the New Testament uses two terms, Hades and Gehenna. Sometimes Hades is referred to as an entity, origins of the Grim Reaper. Gehenna was a rotting, burning garbage dump in Jesus' day. Jesus used it to describe eternal punishment. So in many ways, Sheol in the Hebrew and Hades in the Greek are referring to the same thing, the current underworld and the abode of the dead. Jesus told us about the rich man and Lazarus in Luke chapter 16. He describes two separate compartments in the underworld. Luke 16:23 says, and being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. So one side was Hades, the other side was called Abraham's bosom. One part hell, the other part paradise. But this is a temporary holding area. It isn't the final eternal place of punishment. This will be the lake of fire, the one Jesus called Gehenna. In real life, when a person commits a crime, they are arrested and placed in jail. This is a temporary holding cell until their trial. They go before a judge and are then convicted for their crime, and a sentence is placed on them. Then they are sent to prison to serve out their sentence. The same is true for spiritual judgment. The current underworld is a holding cell, a place people are awaiting their trial, their final judgment. One day, each and every soul will have their day in court and be judged. Revelation 20:11-15 says, Then I saw a great white throne, and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works, by the things which were written in the books. The sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them, and they were judged, each one according to his works. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. The second death is the second hell, the eternal one, the one known as the lake of fire. But it wasn't made for man. It was made for the devil and his angels. Matthew 25:41. Then he will also say to those on the left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. They sinned first. They rose up in rebellion. They go to hell. But if man is complicit in their rebellion, man has no other place to go than that same place prepared for the devil and his angels. Okay, so these angels that are locked up, which Greek word did Peter use? Hades, the temporary hell, or Gehenna, the eternal one? Neither. See, these guys are so bad, they get a special place. The Greek word is Tartarus. Peter was alluding to the place known to the Greek culture of his day as Tartarus. Tartarus is the name of a subterranean region, doleful and dark, regarded by the ancient Greeks as the abode of the wicked dead, where they suffer punishment for their evil deeds. Peter's mere mention of this place shows that he was alluding to the mixture of divine and human, something Greek culture was extremely familiar with. Greek mythology is loaded with all sorts of allusions to this rebellion that happened in Genesis chapter 6. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. These angels are locked in chains of darkness. That word for darkness is used of the darkness of the netherworld, the underworld,
the world of the dead.
Now in the Iliad, Tartarus is described as being so far below Hades as the earth is below heaven. It's not just hell, it's the worst part of hell. That sounds like something I've read about in other parts of Scripture. Tartarus sounds an awful lot like the bottomless pit spoken about in Revelation. One day, Satan will be locked away there. Revelation 20, first 3 verses. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things he must be released for a little while. And then there's another mention in Revelation chapter 9. The first 2 verses read, Then the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. He opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Now can you imagine that the divine beings convicted of the most heinous crimes being released from their prison for a time? Jesus said in Matthew 24:21, For then there will be great tribulation, such has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. Think about that.